Hi, my name is Bomback, and today we're going to learn how to compose solo guitar material using Counterpoint as your basis. So what we're going to do is talk about Counterpoint first. Counterpoint, of course, is the movement of two voices. So we're going to talk about the different movements at first. There's parallel movement, where you're going to have two voices moving at the same direction in the same interval, something like this. You can also have similar motion, which is moving the same direction but different intervals, something like that. And of course, you can have oblique motion, which is one voice stays the same while the other one moves. Something like that. Or, of course, and the last one, which happens to be, I think, the most important one, and certainly the most interesting to listen to, is contrary motion. Now, contrary motion is when two voices move in opposite directions. Now, I find this to be very interesting because it kind of splits the mind in two different directions when you listen to it, and certainly when you play it. What we're going to do is do a little bit of exercises here of contrary motion on the guitar. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a C octave like this, and we're going to move it in opposite directions. So the top voice is going to move up by half step, and the bottom voice is going to move down by half step. And now as these move in opposite directions, you're going to hear some very interesting intervals and some really interesting movements. So it'll be something like this, starting from C. And we can go back the way we came. And we're back home. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll do the same thing again. We'll do in C major, but we want to start looking now at our lowest note as a bass line. So the best bass lines that you can create in composition are either going to be by stepwise motion, or they're going to be by rising fourth or falling fifth relationships. So stepwise can either be whole step or by half step, especially by descending, or basically cycle 5, rising fourth, falling fifth. So right? We've all heard that kind of relationship before. So what we'll do is then we'll do we'll just go chromatically here, cycle 5. But what we'll do is we'll just do chromatically the top voice going up by by half steps. Let's try that. And then back home. You can keep going if you wanted. And then something like this. You can go all day long. It's fun to listen to it. You can also do it by keys if you'd like. We could do the cycle 5 again, starting from C, but then have the top voice go in a key. So again, we'll go to C major. So that means the top voice will go up to D. So go to D, and now the C will go down to F. And then now it'll go up to B flat, but this will go up to E. And then you can go up to E flat to F, and on and on. And then we're back to C. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom voice and we're going to have it go by cycle 5, and then after that we're going to have it follow it by a half step. This is going to sort of simulate a tritone substitution kind of movement, while the top voice is just going to move up chromatically. And we'll get some pretty interesting intervals as we go through this. We're going to go from C. C is going to go down to F. And the top voice, the C is going to go up to C sharp. And then now it's going to go the bottom voice down a half step, while the top voice goes up a half step. And now the E is going to go to A, and the top voice is going to go up to D sharp. Now you're going to have the bottom voice go down a half step, like a tritone sub. And then now the top voice moves up in half step again. And now it's going to move up a fourth. Okay, and then down. We're back to C there. And basically the cycle would start all over again. Now you can do this in a variety of keys. You can do this in major, minor, melodic minor, harmonic major, diminished. You can do all kinds of different movements. And I think it's important that you do, because that will give you more command of obviously the fretboard, but also give you more experience working contrapuntally on the guitar. Okay, now that we've kind of experimented with contrary motion a little bit, now we'll start looking at that and using it in a compositional fashion. So now what we'll do is, now we're going to think as the bottom voice as a bass line. Doesn't have to necessarily be root position, it could be inversions, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And then the top voice, we're just going to think of it melodic. So we could just take the top voice and maybe come up with a little motif, something like, and then maybe just come up with a bass line for that. Just doesn't have to be a moving bass line, but just any note that you can put down and then play that melody on top. Okay, gives it an interesting sound. Now with the lower voice, you can move it down by step or up by step, or you can move it cycle 5. Those tend to be the most pleasing on the ear. So if I did that, maybe move it down by whole step. We can move it up. So we did this. So now we're getting some interesting context there. Maybe we can even do it kind of an interesting little motion there. And maybe as you go through, you can always vary the melody a little bit. So those are kind of fun little things. You just kind of play around with it a little bit. Now, once you start getting some melodic material and a bass line that you like, then it's time to start thinking about chords. And so the outer voices tend to be the most recognizable when you start doing chord voicings. This is why counterpoint is so important, because the listener can really focus in on the low voice and the high voice. The middle, it's a little bit tougher, especially for a novice listener. So what you basically want to do as you're thinking of these is finding chords, of course, that you find are going to be complementary to the melody. But then also you're going to find voicings that move in between each other with smooth voice leading. Smooth voice leading will get you in and out of any chord as long as it is voice led well. So as you play this, you know, I certainly hear this, especially with the G in the voice, bottom voice. You can certainly hear a G sus sound there. Or even a C over G, which is the same kind of a thing. I hear that as a minor 11th kind of sound. You know, something, let's see here. How about something like this? Again, D minor sort of sound, or maybe something like this. Maybe not that one. I hear that as a B Lydian kind of sound. It's emphasizing that E. So you just kind of go through those and just hear what sounds best to you. And that's, you kind of take it from one chord at a time. Now it doesn't have to be one per measure, it could be one per beat or one every 2 beats. It's whatever your creative mind can come up with. So another little exercise for this is to take standard tunes and maybe just play the outer voices. So you may play the bass line with the lower voice and then basically do a condensed version of the melody in the top voice. You just take structural tones of a popular standard tune and just see how those kind of interplay with each other and kind of listen to chord sounds. So what I'll do is play for you now just outer voices of a standard tune just so you can hear it. Okay, so there you can hear the different intervals it goes through and the harmonies that are implied. I suggest taking maybe a real book out and just going through and see if you can just sort of play the bass line, whatever's on beat 1, and play whatever melodic note is on beat 1 as well, or something close to it that you maybe think it emphasizes, and just listen to how do they interplay. This particular one's interesting because the bass line goes into cycle 5 quite a bit, so you'll see cycle 5. Here it does something a little interesting, does sort of a tritone thing. Okay, now we're going to go back to the cycle 5. Here now it's going to move up by a half step and do cycle 5. Now we're going to go up by step, start this over. Cycle 5. And now it's going to move down by half step. There it's moving down by a major third. Now we're back to cycle 5 again. And now it's going to sort of remain, the bass line's going to remain the same, but now it's changing chord quality. So now it's kind of like a oblique kind of motion, right? Down by steps now. Again, we were talking about that step motion. Cycle 5. Okay, so there you go. So in a very popular standard there, you have seen both cycle 5 bassline movement as well as stepwise movement. And you listen to a lot of experienced jazz players, and they'll tell you this is one of the best progressions that you can improvise on for jazz, or not even improvise, just a compositional piece. So now what I'm going to do for you next is I'm going to play a composition of mine off of my latest album, Midnight Phase. It's got Anthony Shattuck on upright bass and Alex Klein on drums. And this is a particular piece that I wrote using this method that I just explained to you. Certainly came from just using counterpoint and then embellishing here and there. A lot of stepwise motion as well as cycle 5. But there's a few other little tricks in there as well. So give that a listen, and afterwards I'll go in a little more in depth about how I came up with it and what my sort of procedure was. All right, so that was my tune On the Other Side of the Hill. So now let's take a look at it more closely and break it down for you. So the opening line, which is, so here I was thinking of the outer voices here, which is F in the bass and a D at the very top. So this sort of makes, I think of it as a sixth, but it's a compound sixth. So a voicing that I chose for this is this one, which is a voicing in fifths. It's all perfect fifths. So fifth, fifth, and fifth again. In the next bit here, now we're going to do the melodic fragment again. Okay. So now this chord is a E flat major 7 sharp 11 with its third, which is G, in the bass. So we have G, which is the third. We have E flat, which is the root. We have an A here, which is sharp 11. And we have a D, which is the major 7. And now I take that melodic fragment and I move it a little bit. Okay, so now we have this sound, which is an E minor, either a sus or maybe an 11. I hear it more of as a sus. All right, from here now it's going to go, and now it's going to do that leap up, but now the bass line is going to move up by a fifth to B. It actually resolves there. It's sort of a suspension. And then I go down now by half step in the bass. And I do a little. So that's going to be now, we were at a B minor 7, suspended. Now it moves down to B major 7 sharp 11. Then, and now we're at this point. So now we have F sharp in the bass, and we have an A in the lead voice here, the top voice. Now here what I do is something a little bit interesting. It's going to now move up by a whole step. So we have this little leap here, moves up by a 6. And then I go up a whole step, do the same thing. So it has that very kind of uplifting feeling to it. And now what I'm going to do is something very interesting. Now the outer voices, which is now actually both of them are going to be G sharp. Now the bottom voice is going to move down by a whole step. And now the top voice is going to move up by half step in contrary motion. And now this is going to resolve us to G. So I'm going to do it again. So it's going to go. Okay, so it's an interesting little resolution there. To my ear, it sort of tonicizes that G area. Now we do this little melodic fragment again. Now here we've gone, the lower voice has gone from G to F sharp, and the top voice now ends on a D. I do this little country thing. All right, so this is like a D over F sharp, right, over its third. And I do. Now we both go down, and it's E in both voices, and they're the E strings. And I sort of fill in kind of an E minor sort of sound. And then we go. All right, so now we're back on the F sharp again. F sharp, and we have A in the top voice, and then I do, so the top voice has moved up, and now the bottom voice has moved up, but by half step, which now gives us our G chord again. Okay, so now what it's going to do, it's going to go back to sort of the A theme once again, so now we're back into, again, so that's the F, voicing in all fifths. Back at that E flat major 7 sharp 11 with the G in the bass. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the E chord, again, the E minor chord. But instead of doing this, like we did the last time, now I'm going to go up by an octave. Instead of here, we're going to go, so, and again, I'm going to do a sort of E minor voicing there. And then now I'm going to go to A. So this is again sort of cycle 5 kind of movement, E minor. And Now at this point, you're going to sort of expect it to resolve like any kind of 2-5-1 back to D. This tune is basically in D. We just never ever go to D. And while that's what you would expect, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm actually going to now take you somewhere else. I'm going to do what's called a deceptive resolution. Instead of going to D, I'm going to go back to G. And instead of putting the tonic in the top voice, I'm actually going to give you the third. And this gives it a very warm, sentimental sound, I think. So let me sort of play that last A section again for you so you can hear it in context. All right, so now at this point, I think it's time for you to go ahead and grab your guitar and sort of start playing around with some of these concepts that I've showed you throughout this video. Now just working with the top voices and just sort of improvising melodies and trying out different bass lines and see what colors it can give you. Every bass line will give a melody a different color depending on where you want to put the bass line. So just experiment with some things, and when you get something you think you like, then start thinking about what chords you want to put in between. And again, it can be root position voicings, inversions, just whatever you can come up with, really. It's up to you. This is completely, I'm giving you the tools. You can construct whatever you like. Really, just your ears are going to be your best tool to use. So just listen to it, maybe record yourself, play it back, experiment with things, and I'm sure you'll come up with a lot of great things. So if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and go ahead and like the video. There'll be more videos like these to come, and we're going to do a variety of subjects. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you around. Thank you.